The first night in our new home felt heavy with expectation. I had married David just a few months prior, and this house was supposed to mark a fresh start for both of us. Yet, as I stood in the dimly lit living room, surrounded by boxes and the scent of fresh paint, a sense of disconnection settled over me like a thick fog. My stepson, Ethan, had barely acknowledged my presence since we moved in. His teenage silence felt like a wall between us, one that I was desperate to break down. Dinner that night was tense. David had prepared his famous meatloaf, a family recipe passed down through generations, and I hoped it would bridge the gap between us. But Ethan picked at his food, his eyes fixed on the flickering candlelight rather than engaging in conversation. I tried to draw him out with questions about school or friends, but he offered only short responses, his mind seemingly elsewhere. The air grew thick with unspoken words and awkward glances. As the evening wore on, a storm rolled in outside. Thunder rumbled ominously as rain lashed against the windows. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging us into darkness. I fumbled for my phone to use its flashlight but felt Ethan's presence shift beside me. "I'll get some candles," he said quietly before disappearing into the hallway. When he returned with flickering candles in hand, something about his demeanor struck me as odd. He smelled just like David, his father's cologne lingering in the air around him. It was an unmistakable scent that stirred something deep within me. It reminded me of comforting evenings spent together when David and I first started dating. I shook off the thought as irrational but couldn't help but notice how closely Ethan resembled his father in that moment. As we sat together in the dim glow of candlelight, something shifted between us, an unspoken bond formed out of shared isolation from the storm outside and from each other's lives. I caught him looking at me differently than before. There was an intensity in his gaze that made my heart race unexpectedly. "It's just a storm," he said softly, breaking the silence as thunder crashed again outside. I nodded absently, my thoughts racing as I considered how to connect with him further while also feeling an inexplicable pull toward this young man who was now my family by marriage yet remained so distant from me emotionally. The storm raged on into the night, creating an atmosphere thick with tension and uncertainty. In that moment of vulnerability illuminated by candlelight, Ethan leaned closer to me, his breath mingled with the scent of rain and cologne that enveloped him like a shroud. My heart pounded louder than any thunder outside as our eyes locked for what felt like an eternity. Then came an unexpected kiss, soft yet electric, that sent shockwaves through my body and left me breathless with disbelief at what had just transpired between us. Just as quickly as it began, reality crashed back into focus when I pulled away abruptly, my mind racing with confusion and guilt over what had happened between us moments before. It felt wrong yet intoxicating all at once. "Ethan," I started but faltered under his intense gaze, words escaped me entirely. He stood up suddenly and moved toward the window to peer out into the stormy night beyond, a gesture filled with uncertainty as if he too was grappling with what we'd just shared. Before either of us could say another word or process our actions further, David returned home early from work, a surprise visit meant to brighten my evening after all he'd been through lately at work, but instead walked straight into a scene charged with unresolved tension hanging heavily in the air around us. "Hey. What's going on here?" he asked cautiously while assessing both of our expressions, the concern etched across his brow unmistakable even amidst laughter from earlier conversations now lost among all this chaos surrounding us tonight. I opened my mouth to explain but found no words came forth. Instead I simply stood frozen between them, the weight of decisions made already pressing down upon me like leaden chains binding tight around my heart. Suddenly another crash echoed outside, a loud clap of thunder followed by flashes illuminating everything outside momentarily before plunging everything back into darkness once more, leaving behind only uncertainty hanging thickly around us all now caught up within its tangled web woven together by secrets left unsaid. The storm raged outside, and I could feel the tension thickening in the air. My heart raced as I glanced from my stepson to the empty space where my husband should have been. The silence felt deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. I needed clarity, but all I had were questions swirling in my mind. "Where's your father?" I finally broke the silence, my voice trembling slightly. My stepson looked at me, his expression unreadable. "He had to go out," he replied simply, avoiding eye contact. The way he spoke felt off, like he was hiding something. I tried to shake off the unease and suggested we find something to occupy our minds, perhaps a game or a movie. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence oddly comforting amidst the storm's fury. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, concern etched on his face. I nodded but felt an overwhelming sense of isolation wash over me. In that moment of vulnerability, our eyes locked, and before I knew it, we kissed. It was unexpected, a collision of emotions that left me breathless and confused. The warmth of his lips against mine ignited something deep within me that I couldn't ignore. We pulled away abruptly as if realizing the gravity of what had just happened. "This can't happen," I whispered, panic rising in my chest. But even as I said it, a part of me craved more, the thrill of connection in a house filled with shadows and secrets. Just then, lightning illuminated the room again, casting fleeting shadows on the walls. In that brief moment of light, I caught sight of a framed photograph on the shelf, a picture of my husband with an ex-girlfriend from years ago. It stirred something within me, jealousy mixed with betrayal flooded my senses anew. I turned back to him, his expression mirrored my own turmoil. "What are we doing?" I asked quietly. He stepped back slightly as if realizing how close we had come to crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. "I don't know," he admitted softly, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But it feels real." His words hung between us like an unspoken agreement that neither of us wanted to acknowledge fully. The storm continued its relentless assault outside while our hearts raced with uncharted territory ahead of us, an uncertain path fraught with danger and desire that could unravel everything we thought we knew about family and loyalty. As the night wore on and the rain poured down heavily against the windows, I made a choice. I would confront my husband about everything once he returned home. The weight of our actions pressed heavily on my conscience. Clarity was essential before any more secrets could fester between us. However, just as I steeled myself for what lay ahead, there came an unexpected knock at the door, jarring amidst nature's fury outside, and it sent chills down my spine as dread washed over me again like waves crashing against rocks. "Who could that be?" my stepson asked cautiously as we exchanged worried glances before moving toward the door together, our earlier connection now overshadowed by uncertainty about what awaited us beyond its threshold. I opened the door slowly, my heart racing. Standing there was a tall figure, drenched from the rain. It was my husband, his face a mix of relief and concern. "Anna, I came back as soon as I could," he said, shaking off the water like a dog. "Why didn't you call?" I asked, trying to mask the tension that had built up in our home. The air felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. My stepson shifted behind me, looking from his father to me, sensing the unease. "I didn't want to worry you," he replied, stepping inside and closing the door against the storm. "What's going on?" His gaze darted to his son, who stood awkwardly in the hallway. "Just some things we need to talk about," I managed to say, feeling the weight of my earlier decisions pressing down on me. My stepson's presence loomed large in this moment. He had become both a comfort and a source of guilt. As we settled into the living room, I felt an urge to bridge the gap between us all. "How about we sit down and clear the air?" I suggested, hoping for an honest conversation. "I think we should," my husband agreed, but there was hesitation in his voice. He took a seat across from me while my stepson lingered near the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The storm outside raged on as we began discussing our feelings. My husband's defensiveness resurfaced quickly when I brought up our distance. "I've been busy with work," he said sharply, avoiding eye contact. Busy enough not to notice how isolated we've become? I shot back before realizing how harsh that sounded. Maybe if you weren't so close with him, he started but stopped himself mid-sentence. The implication hung heavily in the air between us. My stepson interjected then, I'm just trying to help her feel at home. His voice trembled slightly as if he too felt the tension rising. We kissed, I blurted out without thinking, surprised by my own admission. The room fell silent as both men stared at me in shock. What do you mean? My husband asked slowly, disbelief etched across his face. It was a mistake, I stammered defensively. I was confused. The truth hung there like a fragile thread ready to snap under pressure. My stepson's expression shifted. It was almost one of pity mixed with something else, maybe regret? He looked away toward the storm outside again as if seeking refuge from this confrontation. We need to talk about this, my husband insisted firmly but with an edge of vulnerability creeping into his tone. You can't just brush it aside. Before I could respond further, another loud crash of thunder echoed through the house, a reminder of how tumultuous everything had become. I found something, my husband continued hesitantly. He pulled out a crumpled receipt from his wallet and laid it on the coffee table between us. It was for a dinner at that Italian restaurant, the one where he used to take me before life got complicated. Why do you have this? I asked incredulously as anger bubbled beneath my surface again. It's not what you think, he snapped back defensively but then softened under my gaze. I wanted to surprise you, to remind you of better times. I thought maybe we could start fresh, he added quietly after a moment's pause. My heart sank at his words, they felt hollow against everything that had happened lately. How could things ever go back? As silence enveloped us again, an unexpected noise broke through. The sound of footsteps approaching from behind us made every hair on my neck stand on end. The door creaked open slightly more than before. It was dark outside now except for flashes of lightning illuminating our faces momentarily like snapshots frozen in time. What now? My stepson whispered nervously as all three pairs of eyes turned toward that doorway once more, tension crackling like electricity around us as if waiting for something catastrophic to happen next. And then came another knock, this time louder than before, echoing ominously through our home just when it seemed like we were finally beginning to address our issues head-on. The knock hung in the air, and I felt my heart race. My stepson glanced at me, confusion etched on his face. I could sense the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Should we answer? He asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Before I could respond, my husband's voice broke through the tension. I'll get it. He moved toward the door, and I watched him, anxiety bubbling up inside me. There was something unsettling about this entire situation. The secrets, the lies, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. As he opened the door, I held my breath. A neighbor stood there, looking worried. I heard shouting, she said, glancing between us. Is everything okay? Her presence felt like an unwelcome spotlight on our already fragile family dynamics. We're fine, my husband replied too quickly. His tone lacked conviction. I exchanged a glance with my stepson. We both knew better than to believe that everything was truly fine. Once the neighbor left, a heavy silence settled over us again. My husband turned to me, his expression unreadable. What were you two talking about? He asked sharply. Just trying to figure things out, I replied cautiously. The air thickened with unspoken words and unresolved feelings hanging between us like a storm cloud ready to burst. My stepson shifted uncomfortably beside me. Maybe we should all talk together, he suggested hesitantly. It was a brave move for him. I could see he was trying to bridge the gap that had formed between us all. Fine, my husband snapped, crossing his arms defensively as he leaned against the wall. But let's keep it civil. With that invitation hanging in the air, we began to share our truths, my stepson first, revealing how he felt lost since his father had become distant after our marriage. It struck me how much pain lay beneath his bravado. "I just wanted things to feel normal again," he admitted quietly, looking down at his hands as if they held all the answers. I nodded slowly, his vulnerability tugged at my heartstrings. "Me too," I confessed softly. The connection we had built over these past few days felt fragile yet real. Then came another twist, the realization that our emotional turmoil had roots deeper than just misunderstandings among us three. My stepson revealed something shocking. He had been keeping tabs on my husband's whereabouts, suspecting infidelity before I even arrived in their lives. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked in disbelief. "I didn't want to believe it," he replied bitterly, eyes flashing with hurt and anger mixed together. The revelation hung heavily in the air as my husband shifted uncomfortably beside us. Guilt flashed across his features before it vanished behind a mask of indifference. "Enough with this blame game," he said abruptly, cutting through our moment of honesty like a knife through butter. "We all have our faults." His defensiveness only fueled my desire for clarity amid this chaos surrounding us all, a need for resolution before everything spiraled further into madness. As tensions escalated once more between us three, each person standing firm in their beliefs, I suddenly recalled how intimate moments can cloud judgment and create rifts where none existed before. "We spent night together," I blurted out without thinking, an admission that sent shockwaves through our discussion like thunder rumbling overhead during a stormy night. Silence fell upon us again as those words echoed ominously around the room, a stark reminder of what had transpired between me and my stepson during those dark hours when secrets were born from shadows cast by deception itself. My husband's expression morphed from surprise into fury as realization dawned upon him. The betrayal layered within our family dynamics now laid bare before everyone present without any room left for denial or excuses anymore. "What did you say?" His voice trembled slightly but remained laced with anger as if trying desperately to maintain control over an unraveling situation beyond comprehension at this point in time. "I thought you knew." My stepson interjected defensively while glancing back toward me for support amidst rising tensions threatening to engulf every ounce of understanding we'd managed thus far. All hope now teetering precariously on edge like a tightrope walker high above ground below them without safety net beneath their feet anymore either way they turned next. In that moment came yet another twist. A knock echoed once more from outside our home, breaking through chaos within as if fate itself demanded attention drawn back toward reality waiting just beyond thresholds separating worlds apart still clashing violently against one another inside here too. "What now?" My stepson whispered nervously again while dread pooled deep within stomach churning uneasily alongside uncertainty lingering just beneath surface waiting patiently for next revelation yet unseen approaching fast ahead looming ever closer drawing nearer still. I stood frozen, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My stepson's eyes darted nervously towards the door, mirroring my own anxiety. The knock had shattered the fragile silence that hung between us, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. "Should we answer it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. What if it was someone who could expose our secret? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Let me check first," I replied, moving cautiously toward the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw a familiar face, our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She often stopped by for coffee or to chat about neighborhood happenings. I opened the door slightly, forcing a smile despite my racing heart. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson. What brings you here?" "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she said with an innocent smile that felt heavy with implication. "I just wanted to see how you all were doing since, well, you know." Her eyes flickered between my stepson and me as if she sensed something was amiss. "We're fine," I replied too quickly, feeling defensive. "Just adjusting to everything." My stepson shifted uncomfortably behind me as if he wished he could disappear into thin air. Mrs. Thompson nodded but didn't leave right away. You know, I've heard some things from other neighbors, she began cautiously. About how things have changed in your household since your husband started working late. Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. What kind of things? I asked, trying to maintain composure while my heart raced with dread. Just whispers about family dynamics, she continued carefully. People are concerned for you and your stepson. There was a hint of pity in her voice that made me bristle inside. Thank you for your concern, I managed to say while glancing back at my stepson who looked pale and tense. But we're handling everything just fine. As Mrs. Thompson finally took her leave, closing the door felt like sealing away a part of myself too, one that was slowly unraveling under the weight of secrets and lies swirling around us like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Once alone again, tension thickened the air between us once more. What did she mean by concern? My stepson asked sharply after a moment of silence passed between us like an uninvited guest. I don't know, I replied honestly but felt unease settle deeper within me as if it were an unwelcome companion now sharing our space. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration before speaking again. Each word seemed deliberate yet laced with an edge of desperation. We need to be careful, if people start asking questions. His voice trailed off into uncertainty as he glanced towards the window where shadows danced under streetlights outside. I know, I said quietly but firmly. We both understood what was at stake now more than ever before. Our fragile connection weighed against potential ruin lurking just beyond our doorstep. The night wore on slowly as we navigated through conversations tinged with unspoken truths and half-glances filled with understanding yet fear, a delicate balance hanging by threads frayed from too much strain already imposed upon them. Eventually, exhaustion settled over me like an unwelcome blanket. Sleep beckoned softly despite chaos still lingering just beneath surface layers of my mind refusing to let go completely yet either way. I knew dawn would bring new challenges along with its light piercing through darkness surrounding us now tightly bound together by secrets shared only between two souls caught in tangled web spun from deception itself. The morning sun broke through my bedroom window harshly illuminating every corner of the room where shadows once danced freely throughout night hours past. The contrast stark against reality now unfolding before me as memories flooded back unbidden from last night's events still fresh within grasp despite time passing quickly since then. I turned over slowly only to find myself alone. Confusion washed over me like cold water splashing onto skin waking up suddenly from dream long overdue yet still lingering vividly within thoughts swirling around endlessly searching for clarity amidst chaos left behind after last night's encounter. It wasn't until I caught sight of something on the floor, a piece of clothing that didn't belong to either one of us. That realization hit me hard like thunder rumbling ominously overhead warning signs ignored far too long already leading down paths fraught with danger ahead looming ever closer now demanding attention drawn back toward reality waiting just beyond threshold. Separating worlds apart still clashing violently against one another inside here too. Where is he? Panic surged through me as adrenaline kicked in. Every instinct screamed at me to find answers before they slipped away altogether leaving nothing but echoes behind haunting memories left unresolved forevermore. Rushing out into hallway searching frantically room after room until finally reaching kitchen where sunlight streamed brightly illuminating space-filled warmth contrasting sharply against chill creeping within heart knowing something wasn't right anymore. Not since last night when boundaries crossed blurred lines drawn clearly once upon time faded now into distant past forgotten amidst turmoil brewing underneath surface layers hiding secrets buried deep down waiting patiently for moment reveal. Truth hidden long enough already. Then came another twist, a sound echoed faintly from outside drawing attention back towards reality waiting just beyond threshold separating worlds apart still clashing violently against one another inside here too. I stepped into the kitchen, the sunlight pouring through the window, illuminating the chaos within me. I felt the warmth of the day, yet a chill clung to my heart. The events of last night replayed in my mind like a haunting melody. I had crossed lines I never thought I would, and now everything felt distorted. As I stood there, lost in thought, a knock echoed from the front door. My heart raced. Who could it be? I opened the door cautiously, revealing my husband's old friend, Mark. He wore a concerned expression that immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. "Anna, is everything all right?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His presence felt intrusive yet oddly comforting. "I heard some noise last night, thought you might need help." "Just some late-night projects," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "What brings you here?" Mark hesitated before answering. "I wanted to check on you and your family. It's been a while since we all got together." His eyes darted around the room as if searching for signs of distress. Suddenly, I remembered the strange message from my phone just before everything spiraled out of control. "Did you see anything unusual outside?" I asked him, hoping for clarity amid my confusion. He shook his head slowly. "No, but it's not safe to ignore things like that." His tone shifted to something more serious. "You know how families can be, secrets have a way of surfacing." His words hung in the air like an uninvited guest. Did he know? Did he suspect what had transpired between me and my stepson? My heart pounded as I recalled how we had spent the night together, how our boundaries had blurred into something unrecognizable. "Mark," I said cautiously, "you don't understand." But he cut me off with an intensity that caught me off guard. "I do understand more than you think, Anna." His gaze bore into mine with an unsettling familiarity. Just then, footsteps echoed from behind me. The stepson emerged from his room looking disheveled and confused by our unexpected visitor. The tension thickened instantly. He glanced at Mark and then back at me. "What's going on here?" he asked sharply. "Just catching up with an old friend," I replied too quickly, feeling defensive even though there was no reason to be. Mark smiled faintly but didn't break eye contact with my stepson. "You're growing up fast," he said lightly but with an underlying seriousness that made me uneasy. The atmosphere shifted as unspoken words hung between us like a heavy fog. It was clear that Mark sensed something deeper was at play here. My mind raced with thoughts of what could happen next. Would secrets spill out? Would our fragile facade crumble? "I need to talk to you both," I finally blurted out, desperation creeping into my voice as I gestured for them to sit down at the kitchen table. They exchanged glances before complying. Tension crackled in the air around us like static electricity before a storm. As we settled into silence, I felt time stretch painfully thin. Every second felt like an eternity filled with uncertainty. "I've been feeling disconnected lately," I began slowly, searching for words that would convey both honesty and caution without exposing too much too soon. My stepson shifted uncomfortably in his chair while Mark leaned forward slightly as if readying himself for revelation or confrontation, perhaps both. "I know things have changed since we moved in together," I continued carefully. "And it seems like there are secrets we haven't addressed." The air grew heavier still. They remained silent but their expressions spoke volumes, confusion mingled with apprehension and perhaps even guilt hanging palpably between us, three souls intertwined by circumstance and deception alike. Suddenly, another knock came from the door, a sharp sound slicing through our tense gathering like a knife through butter. We all turned towards it instinctively. None of us expected what awaited us on the other side of that threshold separating our lives from whatever lay beyond it. With trembling hands, I opened the door once more only to find another surprise waiting, a package addressed to my husband sitting innocently at our doorstep without any return address or explanation attached to it whatsoever. "What is this?" My voice trembled slightly as uncertainty flooded back into every crevice of my being once again, a reminder that shadows lingered just beyond sight even when daylight shone brightly around us all. Mark stepped closer to inspect it while my stepson remained rooted at his chair watching intently, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern as unease settled back over us like an unwelcome cloak wrapped tightly around our shoulders once more. As Mark examined the package closely, he muttered under his breath about needing answers quickly before turning toward me again with steely determination etched across his features. "We need to figure this out now." His words ignited something within me, a flicker of hope mingled with dread, and as we stood on this precipice together facing unknown challenges ahead, I couldn't shake off feeling that whatever waited inside that package would change everything yet again. The package lay on the table, an ominous presence that seemed to pulse with secrets. Mark's brow furrowed as he contemplated its significance. I could feel the tension in the air thickening, wrapping around us like a fog. "What if it's something important?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the unmarked box. "We have to open it," he said, and I could hear the urgency in his tone. My heart raced as he reached for a knife to slice through the tape. Each cut felt like a countdown, and I braced myself for whatever revelation awaited us. As the lid lifted, a stack of old photographs spilled out onto the table. They were faded but recognizable, images of Mark with his father during happier times. I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with confusion as I picked one up. "What do these mean?" I asked, looking at him for answers. "I don't know," he replied, his voice low and tense. "But it's strange that they're here now." As we sifted through the photos, one caught my attention, a picture of Mark's father holding a woman who looked remarkably like me at my age. The resemblance was uncanny, and my breath hitched in my throat. "Who is she?" I blurted out, feeling an unsettling chill creep up my spine. Mark leaned closer, squinting at the image. It can't be." His expression shifted from confusion to realization as he recognized the truth hidden within that snapshot. Before we could process this new twist, we heard footsteps approaching from the hallway. My heart sank as I realized it must be his stepson coming home early from work again. The atmosphere shifted instantly. We were no longer two people uncovering family secrets but conspirators caught in a web of deception. Mark quickly shoved the photos back into the box and closed it just as his son entered the room. "Hey," he said casually, though there was an edge to his voice that belied his calm demeanor. "What are you two up to?" "We were just discussing some family history," Mark replied smoothly, but I could sense the tension radiating off him like heat from a flame. His son raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he moved toward the kitchen to grab a drink. The brief moment of relief was short-lived as I exchanged worried glances with Mark. This was far from over. After what felt like an eternity of awkward silence punctuated by clinking glasses and muffled movements in the kitchen, Mark finally broke free from our son's presence and pulled me aside into another room. "We need to talk," he said urgently once we were alone. "What if he finds out?" I whispered fiercely, glancing back toward where his son had been standing moments before. "He won't," Mark assured me with more confidence than I felt at that moment. "But we need to figure out how this woman relates to us." I nodded slowly, trying to regain my composure as unease settled deep within me again like stones in my stomach. It was becoming increasingly clear that our lives were intertwined in ways neither of us fully understood yet. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door that made both of us jump, a sharp sound cutting through our tense conversation like glass breaking on tile floors. "Who is it?" Mark called out cautiously while moving toward the door. "It's me," came his son's voice again, this time laced with urgency rather than casualness. Mark glanced back at me before opening it slightly. There was something about his son's tone that suggested more than just curiosity now, perhaps even concern or suspicion. "I saw something outside," he said breathlessly when Mark opened up enough for him to slip inside without waiting for permission first. "There's someone lurking around our house." My heart raced anew as dread washed over me. What if this person knew our secrets? What if they had come looking for answers? The thought sent shivers down my spine while Mark's protective instincts kicked into high gear. "Stay here," he instructed firmly before stepping past our son toward the front door again. his body language betraying nothing but determination even while fear lurked beneath its surface. I watched them exchange worried glances before they stepped outside together into darkness, their silhouettes swallowed whole by nightfall as they vanished beyond sight, leaving me alone with uncertainty hanging heavily around me like fog enveloping trees in wintertime woods. Minutes passed like hours until finally they returned, but not alone. Another figure shadowed them closely behind, a stranger whose face remained obscured by shadows cast against porch lights illuminating their path homeward once more. "What happened?" I demanded anxiously when they re-entered, their expressions unreadable yet charged with tension palpable enough to cut through air between us all too sharply now. "It's fine," Mark replied quickly, though there was nothing reassuring about how he said those words, not when uncertainty loomed large overhead, still lingering over everything else left unsaid between us all. I stood there, my heart racing as I processed the weight of Mark's words. "It's fine" felt like a fragile shield against the storm brewing inside me. I needed answers, but the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "Fine?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my tone. "You both look like you've seen a ghost." The stepson shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between me and Mark. I could feel the air crackling with unspoken truths, and it made me uneasy. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that usually signaled he was about to deflect. "Really, Anna? It's nothing to worry about." But his voice lacked conviction. I turned to his son, desperate for clarity. "What did you two talk about?" He hesitated before speaking, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "Just family stuff." The way he said it made my skin crawl. It sounded rehearsed, too polished for comfort. "I don't believe that for a second," I shot back, frustration bubbling over. "You're hiding something from me." My voice rose slightly, echoing in the quiet house that felt so foreign now. "Calm down," Mark said sharply, his patience fraying at the edges. "We're all just trying to figure this out." His tone softened as he added, "Let's sit down and talk." I nodded stiffly but felt an overwhelming urge to flee this conversation, this entire situation, before it consumed us all completely. As we settled into the living room, I noticed how the shadows danced across the walls under the flickering light of a single lamp. It was almost comforting until I remembered that those shadows were also hiding secrets. "Anna," Mark began hesitantly, "there's something we need to address." My stomach twisted at his serious tone. It felt like we were standing on the edge of an abyss. "Go ahead," I urged him on, knowing that whatever it was would change everything yet again. "It's about your relationship with Jason." My breath caught in my throat at hearing my stepson's name mentioned so directly in this context. "What about it?" My voice trembled slightly as I fought against the swell of anxiety rising within me. Mark exchanged a glance with Jason before continuing carefully. "He feels confused about everything happening in our family right now." Jason suddenly interjected defensively, "I'm not confused. You're just making this more complicated than it needs to be." I glanced at him sharply. He sounded defensive and yet oddly passionate, a dangerous combination. My instincts screamed at me to tread carefully here. "Conflicted emotions are normal," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady despite how shaky my own feelings had become lately. Mark sighed heavily as if carrying an invisible weight on his shoulders that threatened to crush him under its burden. "Look, Anna, things have changed since you moved in." "I know they have." I snapped back before taking a deep breath to regain control of myself. "Then let's talk about those changes," Mark suggested cautiously while glancing at Jason again. Jason crossed his arms defiantly but didn't protest further as we delved deeper into our tangled web of relationships and misunderstandings. As we talked through our issues, my feelings of isolation versus their struggles with acceptance, an unexpected tension arose when Jason finally admitted something that left me reeling. "I've been feeling closer to you than anyone else in this house." "What do you mean by closer?" My voice came out sharper than intended as confusion washed over me again like ice water splashed across my skin. I mean, you understand me better than he does. He gestured toward Mark but quickly added defensively, not that you don't care. It's just different. The air thickened with unspoken implications hanging heavy between us all now, the kind of implications that could shatter everything if not handled delicately enough. I'm your stepmother, I reminded him gently even though doubt gnawed at my insides like hungry rats seeking shelter from storms outside our windows. And yet, his gaze held mine firmly as if daring me not to look away from what lay beneath those words unspoken yet clear enough without needing further elaboration. Before anything else could unfold between us or escalate into something more complex than necessary, a sudden knock echoed through our home, breaking apart whatever fragile moment we were sharing together. Mark glanced toward the door suspiciously while Jason shifted nervously beside him. Uncertainty loomed large once again as we all wondered who might be waiting outside ready to disrupt this already tumultuous evening further still. The knock reverberated in the silence, amplifying the tension in the room. Mark's eyes narrowed, and I felt Jason tense beside me. My heart raced. Who could it be at this hour? Should I get it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark shook his head, his expression unreadable. Jason fidgeted, glancing between us as if he were caught in a web of deceit he had spun himself. Another knock came, louder this time, demanding attention. I'll check, Jason said abruptly, rising from the couch. I wanted to protest but remained silent, fear gripping me as he approached the door. As Jason opened it, a gust of cold air rushed in along with an unexpected visitor, Rachel, one of our neighbors who often stopped by for casual chats about gardening or neighborhood gossip. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mark's demeanor shifted immediately. No, not at all, he replied stiffly, stepping forward to greet her while throwing me a quick glance that spoke volumes, an unspoken warning. Rachel's presence felt like a spotlight shining on our secrets. I just wanted to drop off some cookies, she continued cheerfully, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. Thought you might enjoy them. Thanks, I managed to say, forcing a smile despite the chaos swirling inside me. As she handed over the plate of cookies, my mind raced with thoughts of how to confront Mark and Jason without Rachel catching on. Are you okay? Rachel asked suddenly, her gaze flickering between us all. You look a bit pale. I'm fine, I replied too quickly, my voice strained. I could feel Jason's eyes boring into me from across the room. He seemed frozen in place as if grappling with what had just transpired. Just tired from work, Mark interjected smoothly, his tone casual but his eyes betraying an urgency that only I could sense. Well, don't let me keep you. Rachel laughed lightly but lingered at the door as if sensing something was off. I'll let you enjoy your evening. With that, she waved goodbye and left us alone once more. Jason closed the door slowly behind her and turned back to face us. The moment felt like an electric charge hanging in the air, a confrontation was imminent. Now we can talk, Mark said firmly, crossing his arms over his chest as if bracing for impact. I need to know what's going on between you two, I blurted out before I could second-guess myself. The words hung heavily in the air like an accusation waiting to be addressed. Mark looked at Jason first before responding. It's not what you think. His voice was steady but contained an edge that hinted at deeper issues beneath the surface. What do you mean? My heart pounded harder now as anticipation twisted my stomach into knots. Jason stepped forward hesitantly and glanced at Mark before speaking up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. His voice trembled slightly as he confessed his guilt while avoiding my gaze completely. Go what far? I pressed on with urgency, every word felt like pulling teeth as confusion clouded my thoughts. Mark sighed heavily and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration or resignation perhaps. Let's just say there are things we haven't been honest about. My breath hitched at his words. A sense of dread washed over me as realization dawned on me like an unwelcome visitor. Before I could respond or demand more clarity from either man standing before me, the front door swung open again unexpectedly. This time it was another neighbor, Mr. Thompson, who lived down the street and often shared stories about local history during community gatherings. He looked disheveled and out of breath as if he'd run here in haste. "Is everything all right?" he asked with concern etched across his features when he noticed our tense expressions. Mark stepped forward again despite my instinct urging him not to engage further with anyone outside our inner turmoil. "Just some family matters," he replied curtly while casting quick glances toward both Jason and me for support, or perhaps reassurance that everything would remain under control. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly but didn't leave immediately, instead lingering at the threshold like someone who sensed trouble brewing beneath calm waters yet couldn't quite put their finger on it yet. "We're fine, really," I added quickly before any further questions could arise from him or anyone else who might come knocking next. After all, I couldn't afford any more interruptions tonight, not when so much hung precariously in balance between us three already tangled together within this web of lies spun across darkened nights filled only by shadows dancing against walls illuminated solely by dim light fixtures overhead. Finally sensing Mr. Thompson's hesitation lingering longer than necessary, I took a deep breath preparing myself for whatever would come next regardless if it brought clarity or chaos into our lives once more. I stood there, the weight of the night pressing down on me, my heart racing. The truth was just a breath away, yet shrouded in a fog of confusion. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Before I could gather my thoughts, the stepson stepped forward, breaking the tension. "This isn't what it looks like," he insisted. His voice trembled slightly, and I could sense his desperation. The air was thick with unspoken words and hidden motives. "Then what is it?" I challenged him, crossing my arms defensively. "You've been pretending to be someone else." The accusation hung between us like a heavy curtain, waiting to be drawn back to reveal the truth beneath. He opened his mouth to respond but hesitated again, glancing at his father for support. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he finally admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I thought." "Thought what?" I interjected sharply. "That you could just take your father's place?" The absurdity of the situation struck me then. How had we come to this? "I wanted to connect with you," he confessed quietly, his eyes finally meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart ache. "It was easier this way." Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside as thunder rumbled ominously overhead. The storm had returned with renewed fury, rattling the windows and shaking our fragile resolve even further. "Let's talk inside," I suggested urgently as rain began pouring down heavily against the walls of our home, a home now filled with secrets and betrayal. As we moved into the living room, I felt trapped in a surreal nightmare where nothing made sense anymore. The scent of my husband's cologne lingered in the air like a ghost haunting us all, a reminder of who we were and who we pretended to be. "I never wanted this," I said softly as we settled into uncomfortable silence around the coffee table cluttered with remnants of family life, memories that now felt tainted by deception. The stepson shifted uncomfortably in his seat before speaking again. "I thought if I could become closer to you," his voice trailed off as if he realized how foolish it sounded. "By lying?" I replied incredulously, frustration bubbling up inside me once more. "We're all lost here," he said defensively. "But maybe this can help us find our way back." His words hung in the air like an offer wrapped in uncertainty, a chance for redemption or further entanglement in this web of deceit. Suddenly, my husband entered the room unexpectedly. His expression was unreadable as he took in our tense atmosphere and scattered remnants of conversation left hanging between us. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously, sensing something amiss. We were just talking about, I started but faltered under his piercing gaze that seemed to see through every layer of pretense we had built around ourselves. About what? He pressed further, arms crossed tightly against his chest as if bracing for impact from whatever revelation awaited him. The storm outside intensified, lightning flashed through the windows illuminating our faces for just a moment, 3 silhouettes caught in a tangled mess of emotions and half-truths. I need you both to listen, I finally said with newfound determination rising within me despite fear clawing at my insides. This can't continue like this. The stepson nodded slowly while my husband remained silent but watchful, like an eagle readying itself for flight amid turbulent winds swirling around us all. I'm not sure how we can fix this, my husband finally spoke up after what felt like an eternity filled only by raindrops hammering against glass panes surrounding us, each one echoing our collective turmoil inside. Maybe we should start by being honest, I suggested tentatively but firmly. It felt crucial now more than ever before that we laid everything bare, even if it meant facing painful truths head-on together amidst chaos swirling around us outside our walls too. As we began sharing fragmented pieces of ourselves, the good and bad memories intertwined, I realized how deeply rooted these issues ran within each one of us. Years spent building walls instead of bridges only led us here today standing on shaky ground readying ourselves for whatever storm might come next. Then suddenly came another loud crash from outside, the sound jolted us back into reality. A reminder that nature mirrored our internal struggles perfectly at this moment when tensions flared high amidst uncertainty looming over everything like dark clouds threatening rain once more. With hearts pounding wildly beneath layers upon layers built through years gone by, it became clear, whatever happened next would change everything forever, and not just between us three, but also within ourselves too.